Donald Trump entered the White House in January 2017 as the first president in modern American history with no prior experience in government or the military. His victory shocked political elites in the United States and unsettled allies abroad. Many believed the presidency itself would constrain him, that institutions, traditions, and elections would eventually normalize his behavior. History would prove that assumption dangerously incomplete. From the outset, Trump challenged the idea of objective truth. Within days of his inauguration, false claims about the size of the inaugural crowd were asserted as fact, despite clear photographic evidence to the contrary. This moment, often dismissed as trivial, became symbolic. It marked the beginning of a presidency in which reality was treated as negotiable and loyalty to the leader outweighed fidelity to facts. Throughout his first term, Trump regularly attacked the press, labeling journalists the enemy of the people, a phrase with deep authoritarian connotations. Intelligence agencies, federal judges, career diplomats, and even members of his own administration were publicly discredited when their conclusions conflicted with his personal or political interests. Independent fact-checking organizations documented tens of thousands of false or misleading statements made by Trump while in office, an unprecedented figure in American presidential history. Governance under Trump was defined by instability. Cabinet officials and senior advisors came and went at a rate unseen in previous administrations. By the end of his term, the United States had gone through 4 chiefs of staff, 4 national security advisors, and 5 communications directors. Decision-making was centralized around the president, often bypassing established processes and professional expertise. Loyalty was rewarded, dissent was punished. Domestic policy reflected this confrontational approach. Trump consistently framed compromise as weakness, even when dealing with Congress. This culminated in the federal government shutdown of late 2018 and early 2019, triggered by his demand for funding for a border wall. The shutdown lasted 35 days, the longest in U.S. history, leaving hundreds of thousands of federal employees without pay and highlighting how presidential brinkmanship could paralyze the state. Foreign policy under Trump marked a dramatic departure from post-World War II American strategy. He repeatedly questioned the value of NATO, undermined collective defense commitments, and portrayed alliances as transactional burdens rather than strategic assets. The United States withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement and unilaterally exited the Iran nuclear deal, despite objections from European allies. These actions generated deep uncertainty about America's reliability and altered global perceptions of U.S. leadership. At the same time, Trump expressed admiration for authoritarian leaders, praising their strength while showing little concern for democratic norms or human rights. Diplomatic communications and public statements from allied governments during this period reveal growing alarm over the unpredictability of U.S. policy and the erosion of trust built over decades. The constitutional crisis of Trump's presidency came into full view in 2019. The House of Representatives impeached him for pressuring the Ukrainian government to investigate a political rival while withholding military aid. The impeachment was rooted in sworn testimony, official records, and documented communications. Although the Senate acquitted him, the episode established that presidential power had been used for personal political advantage. The most consequential chapter of Trump's first term unfolded after the 2020 election. Despite losing both the popular vote and the Electoral College, Trump refused to concede. He claimed widespread voter fraud without evidence, even as state officials, federal judges, and his own Department of Justice found no basis for those allegations. More than 60 court challenges failed. Nevertheless, the narrative of a stolen election persisted. On January 6, 2021, as Congress met to certify the electoral results, a violent mob breached the U.S. Capitol. The attack disrupted the constitutional process, injured over 100 law enforcement officers, and resulted in multiple deaths connected to the event. It was an unprecedented assault on the peaceful transfer of power in modern American history. In response, Trump was impeached for a second time, this time for incitement of insurrection, making him the only U.S. president ever impeached twice. Though again acquitted by the Senate, he left office under extraordinary circumstances, isolated, discredited, and with the lowest approval ratings of his presidency. American institutions ultimately held. The courts upheld the law. Congress certified the election. The Constitution endured. But endurance came at a cost. Public trust in elections declined sharply. Political violence entered mainstream discourse. Norms that had long constrained presidential behavior were weakened, perhaps permanently. Donald Trump's first presidency will not be remembered primarily for legislation or policy achievements. It will be remembered as a stress test, one that exposed how much American democracy depends not only on laws, but on the willingness of leaders to respect limits, accept outcomes, and act in good faith. The system survived, but the vulnerabilities were laid bare for the world to see.